Most people never realize how the things they didn't choose, like the decade they were born, the month they arrived, their body type, stress response, and personality, all hold hidden advantages they never knew they had. This video uncovers them all. Let's start with the decade you were born. What was happening in the world at that time shaped you more than you think. 1940s. If you were born in the 1940s, your hidden advantage comes from arriving just after the Great Depression and during a world war. You were raised by parents who had already survived the hardest decade of the century, and that upbringing gave you a level of grit other decades just can't touch. Scarcity wasn't a lesson you learned, it was the background of your entire childhood. Rationing, hand-me-downs, resource management, and making things last weren't just values your parents preached, it was the way life worked. That environment built durability and practicality into your operating system from day one. Your neighborhoods were tighter than anything that exists now. People knew each other, helped each other, and relied on each other because they had to. That level of community bonding gave you cooperation skills and social trust that later generations just don't have. The work ethic passed down from Depression-era parents wasn't motivational poster stuff. It was survival instinct turned into daily routine, and it shows up in your level of responsibility, commitment, and follow-through. The trade-off? Emotional expression got buried under all that toughness, and childhood illnesses hit harder in an era before widespread vaccines and antibiotics. Still, the core advantage holds. You were raised in an environment where quitting wasn't an option, complaining didn't help, and the only way forward was to handle it. That's not nostalgia. That's just what made you who you are. 1950s. As a child of the 1950s, your biggest hidden advantage is that you grew up in the healthiest, safest childhood environment America ever offered. Clean air, stable neighborhoods, tons of outdoor play, and more social interaction than any decade since. All of it built a kind of stability younger generations just didn't get. You weren't just outside more, you were outside constantly, which meant strong physical development from running, climbing, biking, and just moving through the world without constant supervision. That level of activity built cardiovascular health, coordination, and resilience that indoor childhoods can't replicate. The baby boom meant you had more playmates than any generation before or since, which gave you high socialization skills and comfort in groups. You learned how to navigate peer dynamics, resolve conflicts, and build friendships without adults micromanaging every move. The food was better too. Home-cooked meals with minimal processing meant your early nutrition laid down a better foundation for long-term health. The downside was pressure to conform. Fitting in wasn't just encouraged, it was enforced, and racial segregation meant that for many, the ideal childhood came with massive disadvantages right from the start. Even so, the upsides remain. You grew up with freedom to roam, independence, and a level of physical and social development that shaped you into dependable, stable adults. 1960s. You arrived just as society began blowing up every rule. If you were born in the 60s, your hidden advantage is simple. You grew up questioning everything, and that makes your mind harder to control, harder to fool, and much harder to push around. The civil rights movement, the counterculture revolution, Vietnam protests. You didn't just read about social change in history class, you watched it happen in real time, which taught you that norms can be challenged and systems can change. Early exposure to activism gave you confidence navigating conflict and debate. You learned how to hold your ground when everyone else is telling you you're wrong. Smaller families meant more parental attention, and the explosion of music, Beatles, Hendrix, Motown, gave you a cultural richness that shaped creativity and self-expression in ways other decades couldn't match. Television was expanding, bringing the wider world into your living room, which pushed your awareness beyond your own neighborhood. The cost was real too. You saw assassinations, war, unrest, and instability up close. Parenting styles were inconsistent, bouncing between strict and permissive, and drug exposure crept into adolescence earlier than prior generations. Nonetheless, the advantage still holds. You were shaped by a world that didn't hand you answers, it forced you to find your own. 1970s. Some people grew up protected, but if you were born in the 70s, you grew up unsupervised. Your hidden advantage is independence, which means you solve problems faster, improvise better, and don't crumble easily when life falls apart. Latchkey culture wasn't a parenting trend, it was reality. Both parents worked, divorce rates climbed, and you spent afternoons figuring things out on your own. That bred extreme self-reliance and problem-solving skills because no one was going to fix things for you. High outdoor play meant you built physical capability and creativity through unstructured time. No apps, no screens, no scheduled activities, just boredom, which forced you to entertain yourself, experiment more, and come up with your own solutions. The trade-offs weren't small. Households were less stable. Junk food exploded during your childhood, which meant worse nutrition compared to earlier decades. And less parental involvement meant less emotional guidance when you actually needed it. Despite all that, the upside remains undeniable. You weren't coddled, and that made you tougher. You handle chaos better because you grew up in it, and you learned real-world coping skills without digital escapes, which makes you more adaptable when things go sideways. 1980s. If you were born in the 80s, congratulations! You won the nostalgia jackpot. You were raised during peak music, peak movies, Nickelodeon, and MTV. That mix of freedom and pop culture wired you with creativity that hasn't happened since. Michael Jackson, Madonna, Prince, Van Halen, and Metallica dominated the radio, while Lethal Weapon, Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, Top Gun, and the entire John Hughes catalog made its mark on the big screen. Saturday morning cartoons became a ritual, while malls, arcades, and roller rinks were real social environments where you learned how to interact face-to-face. That gave you cultural literacy and strong offline social skills that screen-based childhoods just don't build. You also grew up during the Cold War's peak, navigating nuclear drills, a president being shot, and a steady hum of unspoken tension. That kind of atmosphere built resilience and the ability to function under uncertainty. Outdoor play was still common, so you had physical freedom mixed with early tech exposure, which gave you adaptability without dependence. The downside? Childhood got heavily commercialized. Junk food was everywhere, and academic pressure started creeping up, not to mention the hairstyles. That took on a life of their own. Even so, the advantages are still real. You grew up in a decade that was culturally alive, socially connected, and creatively rich. That shaped how you think, how you connect, and how you handle the world. 1990s. The 1990s was the bridge generation, the last kids who played outside until dark, and the first who could outwit adults on a computer. Your hidden advantage is versatility. You can survive with no Wi-Fi, and you know how to fix the Wi-Fi as well. The Cold War ended, which brought a brief stretch of optimism before 9/11 hit during your childhood or teens. That swing taught you resilience, shaped by contrast, hope followed by sudden fear, which makes you better at navigating uncertain times than generations raised in stability. You had outdoor play and indoor media in balance. The internet was emerging but not central, so you built social fluency in both real-life hangouts and early digital communication. You also adapted to smartphones and social media as they arrived, but you remember how it was before them, so they don't dominate your life. Finally, you grew up in the grunge era with the best sitcom lineup in history: Fresh Prince, The Simpsons, Seinfeld, and Friends, which all gave you cultural grounding and a sense of humor no other decade can match. Like every other decade, this one had its trade-offs too. Comparison culture through magazines and the early web planted seeds of anxiety, made worse by school lockdown drills, and the growing realization that school shootings were no longer unthinkable. 2000s. If you were born in the 2000s, your hidden advantage is learning fast. You grew up with technology already running, which means your brain adapted quickly and now processes information at a speed older generations continue to complain about. The 9/11 aftermath reshaped your entire childhood. Security everywhere, school safety drills, helicopter parenting. That made you risk-aware and safety-conscious in ways previous generations weren't. And while that came with anxiety, it also made you more cautious and deliberate in decision-making. Smartphones appeared mid-childhood, which gave you digital fluency without being born into screens. You remember a world before constant connectivity, but you adapted seamlessly. That balance makes you more media literate than kids who never knew anything else. You grew up with structured rules and clear boundaries, which made you aware of consequences and gave you a sense of responsibility that the previous decade lacked. But the downsides hit hard. Cyberbullying became a real problem. Outdoor play dropped sharply, which hurt physical and social development. The 24/7 news cycle and constant school safety drills drove anxiety higher than ever before. Still, the advantages remain. You process information quickly, adapt to change fast, and navigate digital environments with ease. Where older generations see chaos, you see patterns. That's just how your brain was trained. 2010s. You were born into a world where every tool, every screen, every learning shortcut was already available. And whether people like it or not, your hidden advantage is efficiency. You learn faster, you multitask naturally, and you're fluent in a digital language that older generations just can't keep up with. Tablets and smartphones from toddler age means you have the fastest learning curve of any decade. App-based learning, tech integrated into school from day one, and YouTube as a teaching tool gave you strong pattern recognition and the ability to self-teach skills quickly. You don't wait for instructions, you figure it out. You're fluent in complex interfaces without needing a manual. You process visual information quickly and navigate digital environments intuitively. The pandemic disrupted your schooling, but it also forced adaptability in ways older generations never had to manage as kids. The trade-offs are rough. Outdoor play is nearly gone. Social development happened mostly through screens, so face-to-face skills lag. Social media became a dominant force, pushing you to grow up too fast, fueling anxiety, making focus harder, and shaping your worldview through algorithms that move faster than parental guidance ever could. And yet, the advantage is undeniable. You're efficient, fast, and digitally proficient in ways no other decade can match. That's not a participation trophy. That's just reality. We've seen the impact of your decade. Now let's zoom into the month you were born and how that influenced your biology in surprising ways. January. If you're a January baby, your body got forged in the cold before you ever saw a snowflake. Being built in the darkest stretch of the year, your biology had to adapt. Late pregnancy, low sunlight means your body had to rely more on melatonin and brown fat, the heat-making tissue that helps you stay warm and burn energy more efficiently. That's the hidden advantage of being born in January. Better cold tolerance, a slightly more efficient baseline metabolism, and a naturally leaner build. Winter-born babies also tend to have metabolic traits that make fasting or longer gaps between meals easier to handle. And research suggests that folks born in winter score a bit higher on novelty seeking, meaning you may be the one volunteering for the cold plunge while others balk. But winter biology comes with a trade-off. Low maternal vitamin D in the last trimester, simply because there's so little sunlight, is linked to slightly higher risks of preterm birth and lower birth weight. And in adulthood, those who are born in winter are at a slightly higher risk for higher blood pressure, schizophrenia, and multiple sclerosis. Nothing dramatic, just the kind of winter timing effect most people never hear about. February. If January was about cold, February is about germs. If you were born this month, you arrived right in the middle of peak virus season. That early exposure means you were more likely to catch colds and respiratory bugs in your first year. But the upside is that this same early hit pushed your immune system to mature more quickly and grow stronger than most. You also tend to run more efficient fevers, ones that reach effective temperatures and clear infections faster. Your birth timing influences possible allergies as well. Winter-born babies, including February, are more likely to have reactions to early life foods like cow's milk or eggs, while babies born in warmer months tend to develop pollen-related sensitivities instead, a pattern mostly based on what you were exposed to early on. There's another downside worth noting. Like others born in colder months, February babies show a slightly higher risk of childhood asthma, along with an increased risk of type 1 diabetes, which researchers believe is linked to the same early viral exposures that help toughen your immune system to begin with. On a lighter note, February is the least common birth month of the year, even though conception rates spike around the 14th. And if you were born on the 29th, you have one of the rarest birthdays on the planet. Oddly enough, small studies suggest that leap day babies have slightly longer lifespans, possibly because only the toughest ones make the cut. March. March babies get something the winter months don't. Sunlight creeping back in just as the last stretch of development happens. That rise in daylight means your mom's vitamin D levels were climbing during the third trimester. And that boost tends to show up in real physical differences. March babies generally arrive a little heavier, with better bone mineralization and slightly better lung development, all linked to that late pregnancy vitamin D. There's another advantage that doesn't get talked about much. Babies due in early spring often stay in the womb a bit longer than those gestating through the darkest months. It's just a little more time for growth, which fits with the higher birth weight seen in March. The advantages don't stop in infancy. March babies have lower risks of autoimmune diseases, lower average blood pressure, and lower rates of obesity later in life. possibly because vitamin D plays a role in how the body handles fat and energy. Studies have also found that adults born in March score a bit higher on IQ tests and show a reduced risk of ADHD, which researchers think may come from more stable maternal hormones during late winter and early spring. If there's any minor downside, it's the same one seen across all winter births, a slightly higher chance of childhood asthma. But overall, a March birthday puts you right at the turning point of the year, winter fading, light returning, and a biology that reflects the first benefits of spring. April. April hits a kind of just right window for development. Your mom finished pregnancy in mild weather, steady temperatures, and decent sunlight. Not freezing, not sweltering, which keeps late pregnancy stress low. When the environment is calmer, your physiology tends to be calmer too. Across multiple populations, April babies tend to have some of the most optimal birth weights, and their lungs tend to develop well. When vitamin D levels are decent and late pregnancy infections are lower, the data show lower rates of childhood wheeze and asthma in some groups. There's another advantage tied to this time of the year. Babies conceived in mid-summer and born in early spring are more likely to grow taller as adults and hit puberty a bit later. Adults born in April also show higher stress resistance and are a bit more likely to finish higher levels of education, patterns which researchers link to more optimal development in the womb. The only real trade-off is being born right before peak pollen season means that once you're a toddler, you're more likely to struggle with seasonal allergies. Not because of pregnancy conditions, but because your first big exposure happens right in the middle of the allergen spike. Still, an April birthday means you got the closest thing Mother Nature offers to ideal conditions, even if your sinuses file a complaint later on. May. If you were born in May, congratulations. You happen to land in one of the healthiest months of the year. Your gestation ran through winter into early spring, but you showed up right before the real heat and heavy grass pollen season kicked in. An ideal setup for development. By the time your mom reached her final trimester, sunlight was consistent, her vitamin D levels were improving, and far less viruses were floating around. With fewer infections and more stable physiology, your last stretch of development took place under better conditions than most babies born in winter. Thanks to that, May babies tend to start out with solid birth weights, strong early lung function, and healthier overall development during those first months of life. And the advantages don't stop there. Large-scale studies have found that May births show the lowest overall lifetime disease risk of any month, fewer hospital visits for chronic conditions, and a 10 to 15% lower risk of heart disease, likely tied to efficient cardiovascular development during that well-timed last trimester. The only mild drawback happened during pregnancy, not at birth. Most of your mom's pregnancy overlapped winter, meaning she was battling cold and flu season while being told she could take nothing stronger than Tylenol. She risked getting sick so you didn't have to. And honestly, you kind of owe her for that. June. June gives you something no other month really can. Maximum daylight right as you enter the world, which helps your internal clock lock onto a strong day-night rhythm and sets you up for steadier, more predictable sleep-wake patterns in infancy. All that light affects mood too. Compared with winter births, June babies are less likely to deal with seasonal affective problems or depression later on. Like May babies, those born in June are also more likely to weigh more at birth, have stronger bones, and go through puberty later. At least part of that comes from avoiding the worst seasonal infections during infancy, and plenty of daylight to support healthy growth. There also seems to be an edge for June babies in certain sports. Some studies find that people born in early summer perform slightly better in precision-based activities like tennis and golf. The one real downside? June babies have a higher chance of myopia or nearsightedness. The reasons aren't fully understood, but researchers think it may be tied to how early life light exposure affects eye growth. Altogether, a June birthday means you started life with the longest days of the year on your side, helping shape strong circadian rhythms, healthy growth, and a naturally brighter mood, even if you might not see those sunny days as clearly as everyone else. July. Being born in July means your body learned how to handle summer heat before you even learned how to roll over. When pregnancy ends in sustained periods of heat, the maternal cardiovascular system works harder to keep both mom and baby cool. Combined with the newborn period in the warmest stretch of the year, that timing pushes your own cardiovascular and temperature control systems to mature a bit faster, which is why July babies tend to tolerate warm weather better than those born in colder months. Later in life, that heat tolerance comes in handy. Research has found that July babies have an athletic edge in endurance and outdoor sports, like distance running, cycling, and soccer. The kinds of activities where staying comfortable in the heat actually matters. July births also show slightly higher testosterone levels in adolescents, which some researchers think may contribute to advantages in certain sports. And just like June, July babies tend to land in a healthier birth weight range. There's also a small link between midsummer births and higher adolescent activity levels, likely because people who handle heat well are more likely to spend time outside. But there's always a few trade-offs. While people born in July tend to have lower rates of multiple sclerosis, they have a higher risk of skin cancer, especially if they're fair-skinned. They are also more prone to certain food allergies, especially to summer fruits and vegetables such as peaches, melons, and berries. Just one more catch. July newborns are more vulnerable to dehydration and heat stress in those first fragile weeks. But once they're past that window, they sit back and enjoy the weather, while everyone else complains about sweating their balls off. August. If you showed up in August, sunlight was still baked into your biology. Your final stretch of development happened during peak summer, when your mom's vitamin D levels were at their highest of the entire year. Like other summer months, August babies tend to come in a bit heavier, have stronger bones, hit puberty later, and grow into slightly taller adults. Summer timing seems to leave a mark on temperament too. People born in August show slightly lower rates of depression and bipolar disorder, and tend to be more optimistic and extroverted than folks born in the winter. Some studies even say August babies are more likely to identify as morning people, probably thanks to all that third trimester daylight seeping in. Socially, August is the most common birth month in places like the US, which means more kids your age growing up around you, and birthday parties with a built-in crowd. But there's one part of August no one escapes: the school cutoff. In most places, September 1st decides the grade line, which makes August babies the youngest in the classroom. That age gap, sometimes almost a full year, shows up in early test scores, special education referrals, and ADHD diagnoses that are really just younger kids being compared to their older peers. It levels out later, but the early disadvantage is real. September. Showing up in September gives you a head start that many people never realized they had. Thanks to the classic September 1st school cutoff, you're often the oldest kid in the room. That extra maturity doesn't just show up in height or coordination, it shapes performance. Research consistently finds that September-born kids score higher on early academic tests, are far less likely to need special education, and even earn more money in adulthood. All because that early age gap gives you a running start. Being at the tail end of summer, vitamin D levels still have a strong effect, and just like other summer months, people born in September tend to have slightly taller stature and lower risks of multiple sclerosis and schizophrenia. Studies have even found that September babies are more likely to live past 100, a pattern researchers connect to healthier third trimester gestational environments. There's also an advantage for September kids in sports leagues that use fall cutoffs. Being the oldest in your age group often means more playing time, more confidence early on, and better odds of being pushed into advanced teams when those differences matter the most. As for downsides, they're pretty limited. The main one is that early fall births overlap with heavy seasonal allergens, so September babies have a slightly higher chance of pollen sensitivities during early childhood. But that's about all. October. October babies are built differently. Stronger and healthier than most. Studies consistently show higher bone density, lower overall cancer risk, and about a 10% lower chance of cardiovascular disease later in life. It's one of those birth month patterns researchers keep finding across population after population. There's also a mental health advantage that rarely gets mentioned. People born in October show some of the lowest rates of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and suicide rates are about 17% lower compared with annual averages. That combination puts October near the top in longevity research, right next to September. Performance-wise, October birthdays pop up in unexpected places. Kids born this month tend to do well in power and coordination tests, grip strength, vertical jumps, sprint starts, and they're disproportionately represented in sports like hockey and football. Nearly a quarter of NHL players were born between October and December, reflecting that same pattern of stronger early physical development. The drawback is mostly in the early years. October babies run a higher risk of childhood asthma and more frequent respiratory illnesses in infancy, because they arrive right as virus season kicks into high gear. Most of that fades with age, but it makes the first stretch of life a little rougher than average. Otherwise, October stacks up as one of the strongest profiles of the year. Solid physical build, strong mental health protection, and an athletic edge all rolled up in one. November babies tend to land on the more resilient end of the health spectrum. Across huge population studies, they show some of the lowest rates of schizophrenia, depression, and seasonal affective disorder of the entire year. They also tend to be easier babies, fewer tantrums, calmer temperaments, and overall happier compared to those born in the darker winter months. The physical side looks just as solid. November births carry a 10 to 15% lower risk of heart disease and lung cancer, and they rank high in longevity research right alongside September and October. Kids born this month tend to perform well in endurance and cardio-focused activities, with youth data showing 7 to 10% higher VO2 max scores. That pattern continues into adulthood. Marathon runners are more likely to have fall birthdays, and November is strongly represented among long-distance athletes. Add in the slight maturity boost from being on the older end of the school year, and early academics tilt in your favor too. Still, the early months aren't always smooth. Newborns who arrive heading into late fall spend their first weeks indoors during peak virus circulation, which means higher rates of respiratory infections and a higher chance of childhood asthma. And here's a fun fact. November babies are a little more likely to grow into night owls, something researchers think comes from being born as daylight hours start to drop. December. If you were born in December, winter sports are stacked in your favor, especially if you grew up anywhere near a hockey rink. In leagues that group kids by calendar year, a December birthday makes you one of the oldest and often the biggest on your team. Coaches favor the stronger, more coordinated kids, which means more ice time, better teams, and more dedicated attention. That advantage compounds over years, which is why a huge share of Canadian pro hockey players are born between October and December. Your health stats aren't too bad either. December births have lower rates of several major neurological conditions, including a 15% reduced risk of multiple sclerosis. And thanks to that early exposure to cold, people born this month have a better tolerance for low temperatures. Personality-wise, December babies are often described as even-tempered and generally more optimistic. And unlike November's night owl trend, you're a little more likely to be a morning person, which makes school routines and daytime structure a lot easier to handle. The rough part is how you start. December newborns arrive just as winter viruses peak, which means higher odds of early respiratory infections and a higher risk of asthma or allergies. Then there's the birthday problem. December babies get the fewest standalone celebrations, thanks to Christmas and New Year's stealing the spotlight. Even so, between the winter warrior biology and that massive hockey advantage, December holds its own just fine, even if your presents sometimes share wrapping paper. Now let's break down how your specific body type gives you a unique edge in modern and evolutionary times. Ectomorph, the endurance build. If you've ever been told you look like you need to eat more, congratulations. You're built for survival in ways most people aren't. Ectomorphs have narrow shoulders, long limbs, and lean frames that make heat their friend and movement easier. Their higher surface area to mass ratio allows them to cool off faster and stay active longer, which is why they dominate distance running, swimming, and just about anything that demands stamina over size. Metabolically, their bodies burn fuel like efficient engines. Little storage, but exceptional mileage. This design traces back to early hunter-gatherers who chased prey for hours under relentless sun. Overheating meant death, and the lighter frames won that race. Today, that same physiology makes ectomorphs naturally good at sports that punish heavier builds, long-distance running, cycling, and endurance training. They recover quickly, handle heat better than most, and can move for hours without feeling weighed down. Sure, they may struggle to add bulk, but what they lack in visible muscle, they make up for in persistence. When everyone else stops to catch their breath, the ectomorph is still moving, proving that endurance always outlasts size. Mesomorph, the power build. If ectomorphs are built to last, mesomorphs are built to dominate. They have broad shoulders, strong chests, and naturally defined muscle, even when they haven't been near a gym in months. Their bodies carry a higher ratio of fast-twitch muscle fibers, the kind that explode into motion, and their hormonal balance favors growth and recovery. That's why they gain muscle and strength almost by accident. In today's world, they're the ones who excel at sprinting, gymnastics, and just about any sport where acceleration matters more than endurance. Evolution shaped that power for a reason. In early human groups, these were the defenders and hunters, the ones who threw spears, built shelters, and carried the load when survival demanded quick action. The trade-off is maintenance. Mesomorphs can overtrain or burn out faster than other builds if they don't balance training with recovery. Their bodies respond intensely to stimulus, good or bad, which means their biggest strength is also their biggest test, learning when to push and when to rest instead. Endomorph, the durable build. Endomorphs are the reason humanity didn't starve to death. They have wider frames, softer builds, and metabolisms that treat every calorie like it might be the last. What looks like slow metabolism today was once the ultimate survival feature. The ability to store energy efficiently and endure long stretches without food. In ancient winters or famines, the endomorph's body didn't struggle as much as others. It endured. That same physiology translates to modern strength. Endomorphs excel at powerlifting, contact sports, and any task that rewards sheer force over finesse. Their lower center of gravity gives them balance and stability, and their thicker muscles can handle serious load. They're built for heavy work, not delicate movement. In a modern world where food never runs out, their energy-saving system sometimes works too well. But while society might criticize the build, biology doesn't. The endomorph's body is a fortress, stable, reliable, and mighty, long after the quick sprinters have burned out. Compact build, the tenacious. Compact builds prove that strength isn't about size, it's about efficiency. Shorter limbs and dense muscle give these bodies an incredible power-to-weight ratio. They can generate force efficiently because every inch of their frame contributes to movement instead of drag. That's why they shine in CrossFit, weight training, wrestling, and any sport where raw output matters more than reach. Evolution favored this frame in colder or rugged regions, where staying warm and carrying heavy loads were survival skills, not gym goals. Their shorter limbs reduce heat loss, and their denser muscle fibers make them natural lifters. The kind of people who once hauled stones and firewood and now move furniture alone without breaking a sweat. The only real drawback is reach. What they gain in stability, they lose in range. But when it comes to sheer functional strength, the compact build doesn't just hold its own, it anchors the team. Tall, lanky build, the Sentinel. Tall, lanky builds are built to see what's coming before anyone else does. Long limbs, narrow frames, and higher centers of gravity make them natural observers, literally above the crowd. Their stride covers more ground with less effort. Their reach gives them command of the space around them. And their long legs make them natural jumpers, giving them an edge in basketball, volleyball, high jump, and pole vault. While their lighter muscle density means they're not built for brute force, they trade that for range and visibility. In early human groups, height meant perspective, the ability to spot danger or prey across open plains. Today, that same advantage shows up in the way tall people are often seen and treated as natural leaders. They're also the ones who can grab what's on the top shelf or fix the ceiling light without a ladder. If there's a downside, it's stability. Taller bodies also work harder to balance and absorb impact. But when it comes to reach, perspective, and presence, the lanky build always stands out. Small frame build, the Nimble. Some people aren't compact powerhouses or tall lookouts. They're small-framed, light, and quick. These are the people evolution built for agility, not dominance. Their size isn't a limitation, it's a specialty. Early on, smaller frames thrived in dense environments, forests, rocky terrain, and tight shelters, where moving quietly and efficiently mattered more than strength. They could hide faster, climb quicker, and slip through places that others couldn't. Their bodies required less fuel, and their light footing and swift movement made it easier to sneak up on prey or move undetected, a silent advantage in both hunting and survival. In today's world, that same physiology still shows up in precision and speed. They often excel at climbing, parkour, dance, and cheerleading. Anything that rewards control, balance, and reaction time over raw power. And while society celebrates tall builds, Hollywood has always known the truth. Smaller frames move better on camera, fit more roles, and age slower in the spotlight. Pear-shaped build, the steadfast. If balance had a shape, this would be it. The pear build carries strength where it matters most, in the lower body. Hips, thighs, and glutes aren't just curves, they're engines. This frame was designed to move steadily, carry weight safely, and keep going when the terrain got uneven. That lower body dominance means exceptional stability and coordination. The same biomechanics that once helped early humans forage and transport supplies now make this type naturally good at cycling, hiking, dancing, and any movement that relies on balance and leg strength. Strong glutes and quads handle sustained effort efficiently. They don't waste energy, they manage it. Biologically, the fat stored around the hips and thighs acts like an internal safety net. It protects reproductive health, keeps hormones stable, and provides a long-term energy reserve. The trade-off is slower fat loss, but evolution didn't design this body to look fast. It cared about survival. Modern translation: steady energy, stronger bones, stable joints, and an ability to handle long days without crashing. The gatherer build isn't fragile, it's resilient. Apple-shaped build, the protector. Some physiques were made to move the world, others were made to hold it up. With solid shoulders, strong arms, and a chest built for force, this body type was the first line of defense, whether from a predator, a storm, or just heavy lifting that had to get done. That concentration of strength around the core and upper body means real power output. The kind that translates into climbing, rowing, throwing, and any task that calls for torque instead of time. Even the thicker midsection serves a purpose. It stabilizes the spine and shields the organs during strain. What we now call core strength was really just evolution's way of making sure they didn't get crushed. You see these advantages in Olympic lifting, contact sports, and jobs that require upper body strength and trunk stability. These bodies generally handle physical stress well and can recover fast when trained right. But if that energy-dense system meets too much energy-dense food, it can lead to weight gain and heart issues. It's as if evolution never planned for modern-day comfort. Hybrid build, the adaptable. This is the build evolution favored, the one that endured when conditions turned against everyone else. Not too lean, not too solid, not too tall, not too compact. It's the kind of body that adjusts to whatever the situation demands. Early on, that adaptability meant survival across changing climates and scarce food supplies. Now it shows up as someone who picks up new skills or sports faster than most. They build muscle when they train, lean out when they need to, and maintain stability in between. They're rarely the first to tire or fall behind. They live in the middle ground, where versatility pays off. Physiologically, hybrid builds manage energy well and respond predictably to training. It's why they often stay injury-free and progress quickly without strict routines. The hidden advantage is not excelling at one thing. It's being capable at nearly everything. Evolution didn't design them for show. It designed them to keep going no matter the condition. Next, your stress response, how you react under pressure, comes with its own hidden strengths. Fight. Have you ever caught yourself snapping back faster than you meant to? Like your mouth jumped in before the rest of you had a chance to breathe? That's the fight response, your nervous system choosing confrontation as your default way of reacting to conflict because it feels safer than letting something hang in the air. Your posture tightens, your heart rate climbs, blood flows to your muscles, and everything in you leans toward challenging whatever feels off, unfair, or out of control. Long before arguments happened over text or kitchens or conference rooms, that reaction kept people alive. Meeting a threat head-on showed strength, protected your group, and stopped danger before it hurt anyone. And now, in modern-day conflict, that instinct makes you the person who speaks up when something feels wrong. You can say the hard thing out loud, hold your ground, and shut the problem down when everyone else is tiptoeing around it. The problem is, sometimes that same strength can land harder than you mean it to. What feels like, "I need this to stop," inside your head can feel like a personal attack to someone who isn't built the same way. But underneath that heat is something people rarely recognize. You're just trying to restore safety the fastest way your body knows how. Flight. Do you ever notice how, in the middle of tension, your mind immediately starts looking for the nearest exit before anything else? That's the flight response. The urge to physically leave the room, walk away from the argument, or put real space between yourself and the conflict. It's your nervous system's way of telling you to retreat to a safer distance. In evolutionary terms, flight was a literal lifesaver. When faced with a predator or any immediate danger, the humans who instinctively ran were the ones who survived. Today, that same instinct works to your advantage by helping you de-escalate conflict before it turns destructive. Leaving a stressful situation gives you the chance to cool down, avoid saying things you might regret, and come back with a clearer head. Some might see it as running away, but the truth is, you're just choosing the path that keeps things from getting out of control. Sometimes the smartest move is getting out of the storm long enough to let the wind die down. Freeze. Picture a moment where someone confronts you and your brain suddenly feels like a spinning cursor. You're awake, you're aware, but every response feels locked behind a door you can't open. That's the freeze response doing exactly what it was designed to do: make you still, make you quiet, and make you less noticeable when a threat feels like too much. In early human life, staying motionless and silent made it harder for predators to detect you and bought you time to better assess danger. In modern-day conflicts, freezing works the same way. In that silence, you absorb details, avoid acting impulsively, and pick up the real meaning of what is being said. While people argue around you, you're giving yourself breathing room so you don't get dragged somewhere you don't want to go. The downside is appearing detached or unfeeling, but stillness isn't apathy. It's your system choosing caution over chaos, a temporary shelter where you can sort everything out. Humor. Ever catch yourself cracking a joke at the worst possible time? Humor under stress doesn't happen because the situation is funny. It happens because your brain is trying to release pressure without blowing anything up. When it works, it can drop the emotional tension faster than almost any other response. But when it's poorly timed or misinterpreted, it can inadvertently make things a whole lot worse. Evolutionarily, humor kept small groups calm and connected. Laughter softened tension, restored cooperation, and signaled that the situation wasn't as catastrophic as it felt. Now, that same instinct lets you diffuse arguments before they spiral, redirect anger, and give people much-needed perspective when they are too wound up to find it themselves. Of course, not everyone reads humor the same way. Some think you're dismissing them or brushing things off. But the truth is, you understand that a room that's laughing, even a little, is a room that can finally talk. Crying. It's maddening to feel your eyes well up the moment tension starts to rise. But crying under stress is a biochemical release, not a moral failure. Tears activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which lowers your heart rate to help calm you down. For some people, crying became a familiar response because it was the only safe and acceptable way for them to express frustration in childhood, so their body still goes there when emotions run high. In conflict, tears often communicate more honesty than any argument could. Crying keeps you from bottling your emotions, communicates that something matters deeply, and signals to others that a boundary has been crossed. And when emotion shows up openly, without rage or defensiveness, people often shift from attacking to trying to understand. The disadvantage, of course, is perception. Crying can be misinterpreted as helplessness and weakness, but in reality, it signals truth, it signals impact, and it often stops conflict faster than raised voices ever could. Fawning. In every conflict, there's always one person trying to hold the whole room together with politeness alone. If this is your stress response, you automatically try to smooth things over without even thinking about it, softening your tone, agreeing to what is said, and doing whatever it takes to make everyone happy. It's the instinct to prevent things from getting worse by giving in, shrinking back, or saying whatever stops the tension from rising, even if it costs you your own needs in the moment. That reaction is actually a form of emotional intelligence. You read moods quickly, notice inconsistencies between words and behavior, and know exactly what to do to prevent tension from boiling over. People rarely explode around you because you instinctively de-escalate tough situations, but fawning or appeasing can come with a cost. You can lose your voice in the process, end up agreeing to things you don't actually want, and often get taken advantage of. What most people never acknowledge is you're just trying to keep everyone safe, including yourself. Hypervigilance. You step into a tense situation and immediately start scanning everything, not just where the exits are, but facial expressions, body language, tone, and the energy in the room. Your attention locks onto anything that might signal danger, and you become more alert and aware than anyone else. Hypervigilance usually develops after an experience where missing a signal meant getting hurt, and your body learned to track every detail so nothing will catch you off guard. It's also an instinct that traces back to people who survived by noticing danger early. Being the first to spot a threat meant you could warn others and keep the group safe. In modern conflict, that same instinct makes you unusually prepared and perceptive. You anticipate how a situation might unfold, plan for the worst outcome before anyone else realizes it's a possibility, and react quickly when things start to go sideways. You're the one who knows what to do when everyone else freezes, because your mind is already 6 to 7 steps ahead. The downside is living in a constant state of alert. When your brain is always scanning for danger, it's easy to jump to the worst-case scenario. That level of vigilance is exhausting and can make neutral situations feel threatening even when nothing is wrong. Information seeking. When conflict hits, your instinct is to grab every fact, example, message thread, or explanation you can find. That's information seeking as a stress response. Instead of freezing or fighting, your nervous system switches into problem-solving mode. Your mind races toward clarity because not knowing the real truth feels more stressful than the conflict itself. The more information you gather, the easier it is to separate emotion from facts, understand what actually happened, and make a decision based on something solid rather than panic. It's also a way of slowing everything down so you don't react impulsively or say something you can't take back. In heated situations, that tendency to verify and get the facts straight often prevents misunderstandings from exploding into something beyond control. The hard part is you can't always get every detail you need. Some situations move too fast, information is missing, or you simply don't have access to both sides of the story. That can leave you stuck waiting for answers you may never get, making it harder to respond in the moment. Still, your instinct comes from the right place. You'd rather understand what's real than react to what's assumed. Tunnel vision. There's a stress response where your attention locks onto one specific detail so tightly that everything else fades into the background. That's tunnel vision. Your focus narrows, your heart rate picks up, and your system pours all your energy into a single target because it feels safer than juggling the entire conflict at once. This response helped earlier humans stay fixed on the most immediate threat. A noise in the dark, a movement at the tree line, any signal of danger that needed fast attention. In modern times, that translates as performance under pressure. When you're locked in, you can complete tasks with precision because nothing else competes for your attention. You block out irrelevant details, keep moving forward when others get overwhelmed, and concentrate fully on the one immediate priority that needs your attention right now. Others might think you're ignoring the full picture, but that isn't the goal. You're keeping your focus where it matters, on the only thing you can control. Task switching. If tunnel vision is all about locking on to a single detail, then task switching is its opposite. Instead of focusing on one thing, your brain jumps rapidly from one action to the next, cleaning the counter, reorganizing your desk, typing an email, pacing across the room. Your thoughts feel chaotic, and physical activity becomes the quickest outlet your nervous system can find. The advantage is emotional regulation. Shifting tasks gives your mind something else to focus on, burns off excess energy, and creates just enough distance from the conflict to keep you from saying something you'll regret. The downside is it rarely solves the problem, and people might think you're avoiding the issue. But honestly, you usually end up knocking out a dozen other things in the process while giving yourself a moment to come back with a clearer head. Tend and befriend. Do you ever notice that when stress hits, you immediately reach out to a friend, a coworker, or anyone you know and love, just to feel like you're not dealing with it alone? That's the tend and befriend response. Instead of focusing solely on the conflict itself, your instinct is to connect, talk it through, and make sure you've got support behind you. It's a biologically rooted instinct to create safety through closeness and connection. Talking to someone helps you sort your thoughts, see things more objectively, and get some validation from someone who can relate. It's not always easy to lean on your support system, because it means admitting you don't have all the answers, and a lot of people find that tough. But sharing the load calms the nervous system, keeps you from spiraling, and having an outside perspective helps you make smarter, more grounded decisions. Of course, this response isn't perfect. You can end up doubting your own judgment until someone else confirms it, and not everyone wants others involved. Even so, it reflects a real strength, the wisdom to know you don't have to carry everything alone. Rumination. After the conflict ends, your mind sometimes refuses to let it go. It replays everything, picking apart each line, every expression, every shift in tone. That's rumination, a stress response that tries to extract meaning and rewrite the past long after everyone else has moved on. It's your brain's way of trying to regain control by imagining a different outcome. Ruminating actually serves a purpose. It helps you learn from what happened. By going over the details, you can spot patterns and figure out what you might do differently next time. It's simply your mind's attempt to help you avoid repeating the same mistakes and handle similar situations better in the future. The problem is that rumination can sometimes feel like it never stops, keeping you stuck in the past. But when it finally settles, you usually walk away understanding the moment more deeply than anyone else involved. Finally, your personality type isn't random. It's a pattern of advantages you can use in your favor. Type 1. The perfectionist. Some people have a built-in radar for things that aren't quite right, an itch they can't ignore until it's scratched. That's the hidden advantage of your personality. You notice when something's off, even when most people don't think it's an issue. It's not about being picky. It's about knowing that small mistakes hide bigger risks, and catching them early saves a lot of trouble. You carry an unspoken responsibility for making sure the details add up, the rules get followed, and the work stands up to scrutiny. You don't wait for problems, you prevent them. That energy makes you the go-to person when things need to be done right, because you actually care about what right means. The difference shows in how often your efforts save a whole lot of time, money, or headaches no one else even saw coming. But when perfect becomes the goal instead of the guide, it often makes completion nearly impossible. Sometimes, the best call is knowing when good enough is enough, and letting the little things go. Not because they don't matter, but because your energy is a resource, not an endless well. Type 2. The helper. Ever notice how some people seem to sense who needs support before a word is said? That's the helper's unspoken gift. You don't just see a group of people. You see the silent signals that reveal who's barely holding it together. Stepping in with help is almost second nature, whether it's a kind word, a thoughtful gesture, or simply being there when it counts. That attentiveness builds trust and connection in ways most people don't realize. You're the one who remembers birthdays, sends texts with the right words at just the right time, and shows up with a lifeline without expectation. It's not about being the center of attention. It's about creating a network of support that holds people steady when life gets messy, and you're often the cornerstone of the group. The problem is, sometimes your generosity runs ahead of your own needs. You give so much to other people and forget the most important person in your circle is you. Learning to let others show up for you too can feel foreign, but it's what keeps your kindness sustainable and your heart from running dry. Type 3. The achiever. Winning isn't just something you want, you need it to survive. You have a remarkable ability to zero in on a goal, cutting out distractions and focusing on what moves the needle. While others are still debating the plan, you're already 3 steps ahead, turning ideas into action. For you, efficiency isn't a skill, it's pure instinct. That instinct to adapt quickly to whatever the situation demands sets you apart. You know how to show up polished and confident, not out of vanity, but because you understand it's the key that unlocks doors. The spotlight doesn't intimidate you, it energizes you, giving you the opportunity to prove you can deliver when it matters most. The need to achieve comes with its own set of challenges. When your sense of worth is tied to success, setbacks can hit hard. But failure doesn't define who you are. It's simply part of how you learn and improve. Recognizing that can ease the pressure enough to keep moving without losing yourself along the way. Type 4. The individualist. Do you ever feel like you're running a secret race, one that no one else signed up for? That's the advantage of being an individualist. You don't just want to fit in or follow the usual path, you want life to carry your unique signature, something no one else could copy. Being different isn't a problem. It's what makes you thrive. At heart, you're deeply self-aware and sensitive. You sense emotions and moods under the surface, even when no one says anything. That gives you the rare ability to name the feelings most people can't quite figure out. You're honest with yourself, sometimes brutally so, and it's that honesty that draws others to you. People don't just open up to you, they know you understand. But that search for authenticity comes with its own burden. You sometimes feel like you're missing a vital piece of yourself, like the real you is elsewhere, waiting to be found. That longing is part of your story, and it can be both beautiful and hard. Still, the people who truly know you already see what makes you wonderful, even when you're still discovering it yourself. Type 5. The Investigator. Imagine having a mind that's like a vault, holding vast amounts of knowledge, absorbing facts and details that others overlook. You don't just skim the surface, you dive into subjects with relentless focus, building expertise few can match. This intense concentration lets you solve problems by finding patterns and connections hidden to most. Your ability to conserve energy and boundaries is often mistaken for aloofness, but it's a strategic choice. By limiting distractions and interactions, you channel your mental resources where they count. This selective engagement lets you bring clarity and perspective to situations full of noise and confusion. Your calm detachment is not distance, it's a tool for sharper thinking and creative problem solving. The challenge is balancing this inward focus with the outside world. You know that your insights hold value, but sharing them requires trust and vulnerability. Letting others in, carefully and on your own terms, turns your solitary strengths into collective advantage. Type 6. The Loyalist. Loyalty isn't just a trait for you, it's the foundation for your world. Your commitment to people and causes creates a net of support that others rely on, making you a stabilizing force in uncertain times. While you may not give your trust lightly, when you do, it's steadfast and unwavering. Responsibility drives you. You take every promise seriously and see it through, often being the most reliable person in the room. Your loyalty fosters teamwork and creates environments where people feel safe and connected. You're always scanning for what could go wrong, not out of fear, but from a strategic urge to prepare and protect. This makes you an excellent problem solver who plans for every outcome. But while you're cautious, you show courage when it counts, standing firm for what's important with clear, practical resolve. Loyalty deepens your bonds with others, but it also makes uncertainty hard to bear. You wrestle with doubt and overthinking, replaying what-ifs that keep you stuck. Once you learn to trust yourself as much as you stand guard for others, your loyalty becomes the glue that keeps everything intact. Type 7. The Enthusiast. Ever find yourself chasing the next thrill, eager to turn every moment into a new adventure? That's the essence of the enthusiast. You bring an energy that turns routine into possibility, always scanning for the next exciting idea, experience, or opportunity. Your energy is contagious, and people naturally gravitate toward your fun-loving, spontaneous spirit. Fueled by curiosity and imagination, you see the world as an endless array of doors, each one promising new discovery. When something sparks your interest, your focus is electric. You dive in head first and show others what's possible when passion leads the way. You have a rare ability to find silver linings where others see dead ends, and this mindset makes you resilient when life throws curveballs, allowing you to connect ideas in ways that spark innovation and excitement. That relentless appetite for newness comes with its own set of risks. When life's challenges slow you down, your instinct is to escape rather than face discomfort head-on. This often leads to scattered focus and unfinished projects. The real adventure begins when you stop chasing what's next and work on building what lasts. Type 8. The Challenger. You're an unstoppable force, an embodiment of raw strength, fearless leadership, and unwavering confidence. That's the Challenger's gift. You don't wait for permission or debate the plan. You take charge, standing firm to defend your values and leading with conviction. You're fiercely independent, self-sufficient, and generously protective of others, especially those who can't stand up for themselves. You have an instinct for spotting weakness in systems and the guts to call them out, turning confusion into structure and conflict into resolution. People look to you when situations demand courage and direction, and your honesty brings you admiration and respect. But standing strong comes with a price. You can come across as intimidating or confrontational, sometimes bulldozing over others without meaning to. Trusting people and showing vulnerability doesn't come easily, and you're often tempted to hide the softer parts of yourself. Learning to balance control with openness transforms your strength from a shield into a source of true empowerment for both you and everyone who follows your lead. Type 9. The Peacemaker. Unlike the Challenger, the Peacemaker is naturally easygoing, patient, and accepting. You bring a steady calm to any situation, seeing multiple perspectives and skillfully helping mediate conflicts. Your supportive nature makes you a trustworthy and stabilizing presence, someone people rely on without question. You have an innate ability to create harmony in groups and help people see eye to eye. Your real strength lies in your subtle but persuasive influence, diffusing tension before it turns into hostility, helping people see the bigger picture, and giving everyone a chance to be heard and feel understood. But sometimes avoiding confrontation to keep peace leads you to complacency, and difficulty asserting your needs can leave you feeling unimportant. Speaking up feels risky, because rocking the boat threatens the very harmony you cherish. But when you gain the courage to stand up for yourself as firmly as you stand up for others, your voice doesn't just keep the peace, it makes space for your own needs as well. Your hidden advantages didn't happen by accident. Now that you recognize them, you can actually use them.